Hello, friends of the World's Well Project. Welcome to the 15th edition of the program. Oprah Winfrey is to be, according to some people, the woman that's gonna fix everything in the United States. Racism, economy, foreign policy, etc. And according to the last speech of hers, and delivered of the Golden Globe Awards at the Beverly Hilton Hotel on Sunday, some people believe that she might be the proper one to lead the most powerful country in the world. As Democrats nationwide encourage Oprah Winfrey to seek the presidency in 2020, those closest to the media mogul are sending mixed messages about her political intentions. Her best friend, CBS News host Gayle King, said Tuesday that Winfrey is intrigued by the idea of a White House bid. She loves this country and would like to be of service in some way, but I don't think she's actively considering it at this time, King said. I also know that after years of watching the Oprah show, you always have the right to change your mind. Close quote. On Monday, Winfrey's longtime partner, Stedman Graham, told the Los Angeles Times that it's up to the people whether she will be president, adding she will absolutely do it. The presidential boss follows Winfrey's impassioned call for a brighter morning even in our darkest nights. At the Golden Globes on Sunday night, in a speech that left some viewers contemplating the idea of a Democratic Party embracing a celebrity candidate of its own to challenge President Donald Trump in 2020. Trump, of course, was little more than a businessman turned reality television star before his extraordinary political rise. House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi noted that Winfrey, like Trump, lacks any kind of governing experience. I think, she says, one of the arguments for Oprah is 45, unquote, Pelosi said, referring to Trump in shorthand for the 45th president. She quotes, I think one of the arguments against Oprah is 45, unquote. Even so, for Democrats in early voting states, and perhaps for a public that largely disapproves of Trump's job performance, the notion of a popular media figure as a presidential candidate is not as strange as it once seemed. Winfrey's speech, as she accepted the Cecil B. DeMille Award, touched on her humble upbringing and childhood, wonder in civil rights heroes. But it was her exhortation of her legions of women who have called out sexual harassers, and her dream of a day when, I quote, nobody has to say me too again, unquote, that got some influential political operatives thinking Winfrey might be just what the Democrats need. I opened this edition of the World's Well Project with this absurd, in my opinion, news. The world is in the hands of crazy, crazy people already. I don't think we need more fanatics in order to control the issues that affect our world. It's clear that she has good intentions, that her experience and her followers are in love with her, because she represents millions of Americans that have not gotten the representation in governments, in senates, in government, and representation at the White House. They will believe that maybe Oprah Winfrey will be heard by strong politicians, like I just read from the Associated Press that Donald Trump was nothing but a businessman, then all of a sudden became a superstar because of his shows and was useful for the Republican Party in order to defeat Democrats in 2016 campaign. But if you look around the world, well, it's pretty crazy that we can even consider this option. Anyway, if you ask me, who will be better between Trump and Oprah, I would say none of them. But the world is full of surprises. You never know. I was thinking maybe Mark Zuckerberg, after his words on APEC, APEC, in 2017 and 2016 might be an option for the candidacy, but we don't need more plutocrats in charge of the world. Because as proven by history, plutocrats don't care and don't give for anyone but themselves. To create policy and to support democracy is way more, it takes way more than just the condition of being rich. Why is this? Because the disconnection between the rich people and the realities of the working class is outstanding. And you can see this with Jared Kushner, and you can see this with the representation that the Donald Trump's administration have sent to fix the problems or to look for a peace process. Now that Likud party, Benjamin Netanyahu's party, has said that they want to claim not only Jerusalem as the capital, but also the West Bank, which in many Jews is considered Samaria and Judah. So it's going to be very complicated issues. It requires a person with experience, no doubt, and requires persons like citizens, you or I, we, the people, who can present leadership to change the conditions of the United States as a power and as an imperial power that is trying to conquer the world with its policies, with its foreign policy, with the trade markets, with NATO operations, and of course with war, as was denounced in Democracy Now! By many people after the unilateral declaration of Donald Trump saying that, it's okay, Jerusalem is the capital of Israel. When you think on account that is true, Jerusalem has been the capital city of Jerusalem, not only because Trump said so, but it's a historical accomplishment of the Zionist dream and the Jewish people dream after Second World War and after centuries and centuries of having no land or nation for themselves. What is required here is that the suggestion of the World Wealth Project is for the United Nations to buy land from different countries. Whether it costs billions of dollars, of course, it's going to cost billions of dollars. But it's going to guarantee at least that the Palestinians may have territory in Jordan. Of course, Jordanian people might not accept this, but we have to find a way out of this situation. Why not the UN and the international community to ask Jordan and maybe Syria once it gets some peace as soon as possible, we hope, now that Russian president is withdrawing military assets and soldiers back home. It will be just a point to consider. Why not to sell a piece of land and to benefit all the people in Jordan, whether it's Saudi Arabia's money, whether it's Israel's money, whether it's United States and United Nations community money, in order to buy a piece of land from Jordan, in order to Palestinians to have their own territory. The problem here is also that the Likud party and the Jewish parties in general believe that that cannot be possible, because once Palestinian people has their land, they're going to go against Israel, period. I don't think so. Palestinian people is looking for peace. Palestinian people are looking for a piece of land, like the Zionists and the Jewish people were looking for a piece of land. Now we have to consider the history behind this, the 1950 agreement that Jerusalem was the capital city for Israel, and that the south side and the old city is in the hands of Palestinian people. And we have to also recognize that the administration of Israel regarding the holy city, Jerusalem, has been very well administered. All kinds of faiths and all kinds of people are from whatever believed, that is Jewish, Christians, or Muslims, are welcome in the city with relative security. And there has not been big issues in the old city regarding this matter. The point is that many Zionists believe, especially when they have taken part on the Israel's army when they say that forget about it, Jerusalem is like a wife, you cannot just share it. Many people disagree. Now that history has proven that Jerusalem has been in the hands of these three main religions, of course, we don't speak too much of the Armenians, which are also part of this division in the city. But because the Muslims, the Jews, and the Christians are the main protagonists in Jerusalem specifically. So when the Likud party and Benjamin Netanyahu's party asks and affirms that they want the West Bank as their territory too, we have to think in another option. And the World's Wealth Project suggests here as part of Riyadh today to consider the situation. Why not buy a piece of land? Send some billions of dollars. You have money, you invent money, you create money from everywhere. The European Union, the UK, the central banks of the world, if you want to look for peace, well, buy a piece of land and give the Jordanian people in the Jordanian country or the Syrian country billions of dollars that are well needed in Syria, for example, in order to reconstruct the country. And we're talking about not a big piece of land, but some square kilometers of land that is not going to affect very much the new settlements for the Palestinian people. And I think as Muslim countries, that these countries are Jordan and Syria, why not, will have to agree to this new option, which is to buy land for the Palestinian people in order to make peace and to find a solution. Now that the two-state solution, according to Benjamin Netanyahu and the Likud party, is not going to work. Now that the conversations and the declaration unilaterally from President Trump has said that no, Jerusalem, period, is the capital of Israel. Historically, it is. But like I mentioned before, and if you go through history and the 1967 war, 1947 Zionist constitution of the State of Israel, 1947, 1948, the war, the 6 Days War in 1967, where different countries attacked Israel, and Israel came out victorious. I'm talking about Egypt, Syria, Iraq, and Lebanon. Israel declares with more due reason that Jerusalem was the capital and is the capital of Israel. The suggestion of the World's Wealth Project is that yes, make some billions, buy some land, help reconstruct Syria instead of keep on insisting on war and only war as the solution for the problems of the Palestinian people. It might sound crazy for you. I don't think so. On the other hand, we have to consider that the world is upside down in every way. Let's take a look. According to The Guardian, the United States, the United Nations Security Council resolution calling for the withdrawal of Donald Trump's recognition of Jerusalem as Israel's capital has been backed by every council member except the United States, which used its veto. The unanimity of the rest of the council was a stark rebuke to the Trump administration over its unilateral move, which upended decades of international consensus. A spokesman for the Palestinian president, Mahmoud Abbas, said the veto threatens the stability of the international community, unquote, while the United States ambassador to the United Nations, Nikki Haley, described the resolution as an insult that will not be forgotten. Okay, that says The Guardian. In the weekly edition for 22nd of December, January the 4th. All these negotiations and these talks are still on running, but the unilateral decision keeps on going. So the reality is that, yes, from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, the embassy of the United States is going to be moving in the next 3 to 4 years during the Trump administration. On the other hand, No rest for the wicked. Peru president faces impeachment vote. Legislators in Peru have begun impeachment proceedings against Pedro Pablo Kuczynski, 79 years old, who is accused of failing to disclose payments from the Brazilian construction firm Odebrecht, embroiled in Latin America's biggest corruption scandal. Odebrecht admitted paying some $800 million in bribes in the region in a 2016 plea bargain with the United States Justice Department. Representatives of most parties agreed last Friday to initiate proceedings to force out the president, who has denied wrongdoing and rejected calls to quit. "I'm not running and I'm not hiding," he said. "I'm not a crook." Or whatever. "I'm not a crook." Chile has a new president, as we all know. Sebastián Piñera won Chile's presidency and with his center-left opponent, Alejandro Guillier, conceding the election as Chile followed other South American nations in a political turn to the right. With 98.44% of the ballots counted, the billionaire conservative, 68, had won 54.57% in the runoff vote to 45.43% for Senator Guillier, a wider than expected margin in a race pollsters thought would be tight. Months of campaigning exposed rifts in the left-center, or the center-left, which former President Piñera exploited to rally more centrist voters around his proposals to cut corporate taxes, double economic growth, and eliminate poverty in the world's top copper producer. Guillier urged his supporters to defend the progressive reforms of outgoing President Michelle Bachelet. So, we see here a lot of crazy people getting in power. Yes, speaking of far-right governments, Austrian president approves far-right Freedom Party joining coalition government. This is what's happening right now, friends of the World's Well Project. That's part of React Today. And that is because leader Heinz Christian Strache is made vice-chancellor and his party will control foreign, interior, and defense ministries. Austria has become the only Western European state with a far-right presence in government after its president approved a controversial coalition deal. Alexander von der Bellen rubber-stamped the alliance between the Conservative People Party and the far-right Freedom Party on Saturday. A previous coalition between Chancellor Christian Kern's Social Democrats and the People's Party collapsed in May last year, which resulted in a snap election, the latter one, but fell short of a majority. The People's Party, 31-year-old Foreign Minister Sebastian Kurz, becomes here the country's new chancellor, and Heinz Christian Strache, the head of the Freedom Party, his deputy. Kurz's party will run ministries including finance, justice, and agriculture, a conservative spokesman said. The Freedom Party, which is anti-immigration, will control the foreign, interior, and defense ministries and others, he said. Following meetings with Kurz and Strache, von der Bellen said he'd been assured the new government will be pro-European, and I quote, "In these talks, among other things, we agreed it is in the national interest of Austria to remain at the center of a strong European Union and to actively participate in the future development of the European Union," he said. It is not the first time the Freedom Party has been in government. It was part of a coalition government between 2000 and 2005. There was uproar at the time among the European Union leaders, and bilateral diplomatic relations were frozen in protest. The response this time is likely to be more muted, given the increased support for other right-wing populist parties across Europe. Similar parties have not, however, had the same success. Marine Le Pen, the leader of France's Front National, lost in May's presidential election, and the Dutch anti-immigration Freedom Party of Geert Wilders was defeated. The strategy has moved, I have to clear here, to clean up the party's image by suspending members of anti-Semitic behavior, including a local councillor for a Nazi salute in October. In his youth, Strachey was detained at a torch-lit protest organized by the group imitating the Hitler Youth, which he now dismisses as stupid. But not everyone is convinced by the turnaround. In September last year, a group remembering Nazi camp victims published a list of what it said were at least 60 anti-Semitic and racist incidents involving FPO figures since 2013. And I quote, "If they really change their ideology, it is a question they can only answer themselves," unquote, said analyst Alexandra Seil. And she quotes again, "I will say they changed their tactics and their strategies mainly," says The Guardian. This is according to The Guardian, guys. And as we can see that there's more controversial issues regarding the far right getting more seats in parliament and government and in senates around the world, things are not looking pretty for 2018. What happens with the far right is that they have the right to defend their race, they have the right to defend their nation, and they have the right to administer the nation and the immigration policies and foreign policy according to their will. The point is that because of the influx of so many immigrants, because of the wars in Syria, Iran, Iraq, Afghanistan, Lebanon, Libya, and all the unrest that is going on in the Middle East right now, well, their far right don't want immigrants. They don't want to mix race, something that Israel has promoted as a democratic country in the middle of Muslim countries which are mainly anti-democratic and, of course, mainly theocratic or families owned. That's what I can say about them, because this is the truth. You can see, for example, in Saudi Arabia, it's a family tradition. It's a family that controls Saudi Arabian policy, foreign policy, everything there. The same happened, and according to their religious inclination, which is used more as an excuse to go toward the religion itself. But there's no doubt, there's a big difference between Sunnis and Shiites. No doubt about that. We can see the conflict that is about to happen and start when it comes to Iran. So, when things are like this, we have to focus on what is happening around the world. As long as corruption, we mentioned a few minutes ago what's going on in South America with Odebrecht, which has not found any responsibles in the case of Colombia, really, or Peru, and other countries in South America, as we know now, more than $800 million in bribes. In the meantime, countries as rich as South Americans, Venezuela, Colombia, Peru, in resources and in mining, are being exploited by corporations and mining enterprises, mainly centered in the United States, Canada, and European countries. So what is the far right going to do? If we know now that in South America, far right movements and governments and ideology takes over the citizens, the peasants, the indigenous peoples, displace them, kill them in systematic assassinations with special characteristics of violence. And that is something that has not been discussed openly in the United Nations, with the exception of some Honduran and Salvadorian and peasants that came to Canada or have traveled to the United States and Europe in order to open the public opinion to this discussion. What is it that the corporations are doing? Using far-right ideology in order to keep them silent, kill them all, displacement, take over the land, etc. Far-right governments are taking over. Not to mention the tensions between Israel, the Likud party, and now China as interfering with Australian government, something that was also mentioned in the last couple of weeks. With this happening, Friends of the World's Wealth Project, as part of REACT today, we as citizens of the world have to unite in political evolution here. Politicians have demonstrated that they don't work for the peoples themselves. Politicians have demonstrated that their interests are the corporate interests. Corporations have demonstrated that politicians are nothing but their pawns in a chess game, which is to control the world. When that happens around the world, around the globe, it's impossible for us citizens to keep silence. So react today to the issues that are affecting our world. This suggestion from the World Wide Project today, January the 10th, 2018, is for us, for the country, and for the world to unite to this end. The World Wide Project from the beginning had invited you, as citizen, to subscribe to this channel. And in the next edition of the World Wide Project, we are going to present what is it that we're looking for in order to create better economies. I mentioned something in the last edition which has to do with education. As soon as you have education, let's say high school, you graduate from high school, the government should provide, now that the Bitcoin is taking over, and doesn't relate to central banking, doesn't relate to high interest, doesn't relate to the normal banking and central banking attitude that has ruined the countries through debt. We can start thinking, even if the Bitcoin didn't exist, just because of justice to the peoples, as democracy is supposed to be, as part of REACT Today, the World's Way Out project, suggest the governments of the world, now that money is being created out of nothing, and there's no support like oil or gold to back up the money or the currency, we suggest that the governments take action independently, which is not what the global intentions of the corporations in the United States and Europe want to do, which is opposed right now by China and Russia, which is very possible that they deliver their own currency in order to combat what Libya wanted to do with Gaddafi when he wanted to start his own currency for Africa. He was betrayed by Muslim countries in that matter, period, and of course was taken over by the United States and of course by the British Empire, which didn't want it, or the United Kingdom, or the British Empire. It's not as much as empire, but it is very influential in the world, as the British Empire backs everything the United States said. Now that the United States is losing grip in the world because it's taking unilateral decisions when it comes to economics, when it comes to free trade, when it comes to NATO involvement in the world. Apparently, only the people that supports NATO expansion in Europe, in the Middle East, and Asia is their friends. The rest is not. As we remember, Ron Paul in the United States, senator for 22 years, he opposed that kind of situation. Michael Schumer has denounced this situation about wars and continuous wars, and the idea that wars as extreme right policy and ideology and foreign policy has been for the last 50 years. It has to stop. So the proposal is this: to minimize, to resume. As soon as you get your high school diploma, you will have half a minimum salary for 6 months to a year, in order for you to start developing your ideas about what is the career that you might have. We have to create policies, and we want to create policies, and these policies to superior education are, for example, the moment you enter university, you might acquire some debt, but not such a significant debt that has been denounced by Senator Sanders from Vermont last year's 2 years ago presidential campaign and elections for the United States, which is to condone or forgive or bail out the debt of the students, like it happens in Germany, for example, in Deutschland, Holland, for example, where you don't need to pay for your education. Your education is free. And to not separate private from public education. The moment you finish your career, the government will pay you, whether it's technological or whether it's a professional career, or let's say, if you want to become a judge, if you become a lawyer, if you become an architect, you become an engineer, the government should provide you for a year or two with some money in order for as long as you prove that you're looking for work and that you are in touch with companies and corporations that might have a job for you. Government positions, the same situation. When it comes to government positions, it's a little different because it's not a private corporation, which is what the New World Order wants to do. Now that we're talking about robotics are going to take, just in Canada, but in the United States, we mentioned this before, 47% of the workforce are going to be taken over by robotics in the next 5 to 10 years. The same is going to happen in Canada. According to the CBCs, 8 million people are going to lose their jobs in the 5 to 10 years. Now that transhumanism and nanotechnology, information technology, bioengineering, and nanotechnology are taking over the nation, as has been explained in other editions of the World's Way Out project as part of REACT today, we need to establish new ways of economies in order to evolve to a better future for humanity. That is one of the aspects the World's Way Out project is asking governments to do, and it's going to present this idea to Justin Trudeau. When we see the new president of Austria working on the far-right issues, this is not going to have a good ending. What we need to support here as a part of REACT today is to remember that Syrians belong to Syria, that Iraqis belong to Iraq, that Afghan people belong to Afghanistan, Lebanese to Lebanon, and Libyans to Libya. Why is it that in all these thousands of years that democracy has been so misused and abused? There has not been understanding among nations. Religions, of course, is one of those issues. The hate for the West and their ways, I don't think so. That has been an excuse used by propaganda. Yes, there's people that hate the West. Yes, there's radicals. Yes, there's extremists, but they have been backed, according to Michael Schuer, according to Ron Paul, according to many others that have political experience for more than 20 years or have been part of the CIA operatives, as Michael Schuer was, as the team that captured Osama bin Laden, which is very doubtful information. Now that there were never a body, they throw the body to the ocean, and people, some of the soldiers, the special forces, the Delta forces that work in that operation died, etc., etc. So it's the same as 9/11. We are sick of this. So religion cannot be used anymore as a factor in order to terrorize the world. With this excuse that doesn't work anymore after 9/11, the World's Way Out project and many students and universities are joining in to the World's Way Out project as part of REACT today to stop this madness. We don't want the world to be in the hands of these crazy guys that are destroying the planet. It was little by little. Nowadays, it's an open wound. They say that the ozone layer is recuperating in the Antarctica. There's scientific explanation for this matter. And the other part is the scientific consensus here that denies all kinds of participation, and as when they say no, science is not politicized. I'm sorry to tell you, but science is one of the most politicized issues in the world. If that were true, we would have been using more older and different energy sources than fossil oil and gas industry. If we want to evolve and advance to the future and save ourselves, we have to replace the economies that we have right now, as proposed by this project as part of REACT today. We have to replace politicians and look for leadership. And we invite universities, thinkers, philosophers, journalism, and the citizens, mainly the citizens, from school to subscribe to this channel, to organize ourselves, and to start transforming the world. Otherwise, we're not going to make it, guys. The only thing we're going to wait for is war. And believe you me, once you see or hear the first blast, if you survive it, you're going to understand that Syria, Iraq, and Afghanistan was nothing compare to what's going to happen to North America, European countries, South American countries, wherever there's American bases, if China and Russia decide to attack the United States for its abuses regarding foreign policy. And now that Israel has been declared the big brother of the world, as it has according to Michael Schur and many whistleblowers, which are the new prophets for the new evils, and many others, there's nothing but the end of the world right here because of the greed and the interests of capitalists, of plutocrats, and super right or super left ideologies that have proven throughout history that doesn't work, especially during the 20th and now in the 21st century. I leave you with this, Friends of the World's Wealth Project. Again, my voice is not coming out properly, but I wish you subscribe and support these ideas in order to transform our realities. Au revoir. Hope to see you again in the next edition of the World's Wealth Project. Bye-bye.